So, hi everybody. My name is Arcangelo D'Alessandro. I'm an architect and designer, and I'm using Blender since 2003, not just for making visualization or to visualize my project, rather to turn them into real objects. We are going to talk today about a project which name is Design by Food. What is Design by Food is a design project that aims to, or let's say that takes inspiration from the food tradition. And it began in 2012, but its roots are a little bit older, because when I was a young boy, I was used to watch my grandmother making noodles, and she was cooking every day like there would be no future. And she was making a lot of noodles and whatever. It was like a machine. And I was just watching her hands and what each piece of noodle or that she was making. And I was, as a young boy, just imagining and scaling the objects and thinking how it would be to live inside a macaroni, or maybe like sleeping in a orecchietta and so on. And this it was just remaining in my head. And in 2012, playing around with Blender, I started making some design objects. So the inspiration can start from maybe a color or or the shape or just the texture. But all the way, I would say, can come from every sparkle that you see in the food tradition. Till now, I made a lot of objects, but we are going to talk today about only two that are, to me, more representative. Object number one is inspired by La Scorzetta. It's a street from south of Italy. And the inspiring factor was mainly the shape and the colors of this object. So, as usual, I started to think about the main shape, just sketching around and thinking, okay, what I want to do. I would like to make a lamp, a desk lamp, not a technical one, rather like ambient light for the living spaces. So those are the sketches. And since I didn't know about the shape, the weights, at that time I wanted to keep an open process, a sort of parametrical way of thinking. So I made the first rendering, and after that I started modeling it. This is a quite classical approach to the design. That means I have in my head a shape, an idea of a shape, and I try to control it all the way. So I just needed a low poly geometry with maybe a subdivision surface modifier, and after that I put some booleans just to locate the lighting fixture, as well as a weight to balance the shape, and a curve modifier just to master the final geometry. Till now, that's fine. I was happy with it, but I had to think in the backwards. That means I had to think about what I have to give to the people that are going to produce this lamp. And it was quite easy. I had to give them a 2D shape. How could I send it that, or deliver to the production? It was quite easy. I made a picture, a background image, and I was using the UV layout editor just to export the UV layout as a SVG file and turn it into a CAD shape, ready to be used in a laser cut or CNC machine, whatever. There's still a step. That means the production needed a shape to curve the geometry. I already had the most geometry in my file, so I just had to produce those two pieces just to give the shape to the metal sheet. And as you see, this is the final result. It's I love it. I have many in my apartment. And it's handcrafted at the end. It's hand-sewed. And you can use it for many purposes, like ambient light or just a place where you put your mobile phone or your jewelry, whatever. Let's jump to the second object. The second object, I love it. It has a very nice taste, and is a caciocavallo is a food that is present in Italy, from south to north of Italy, in many different kind of variation. This object is very important to me because it has a funny and sensual shape, and I love the texture outside. So I wanted to make, again, a desk lamp, but this time I wanted to make a little bit more than, or just go further or beyond the standard design process. So I made a couple of sketches, and after that, I modeled the first exemplar. And since I got my first 3D printer, that was the wrong decision because my living room looks like industry. I made it, but I was happy, but not really, because you know, it's like you make a shape, it's that, and it's going to stay always the same. And with the 3D fabrication processes, actually, you don't need the industrial standard, so you can think in another way. Basically, I wanted to turn this shape into this to the right. Let's say having a sort of variation that keeps the main geometry, but is changing, without controlling it too much. So, back. How could I achieve this target, this task? I was thinking about what I can use in Blender. So, weight paints, displace modifier, subdivision surface, decimate modifier, and so on. At that time, the geometry node was not there, not yet. So, first of all, I needed to remake my basic geometry, a low poly, but in a different way, a subdivision modifier, and then a weight paint just to focus the areas where I put at the end my displace modifier in order to give a texture outside on the outer skin of the object. Now, the problem is how I can variate this object. How can I change the shape? It was quite easy. Here to the right, you see my modifier stack. It's quite easy. I have 3 levels of subdivision surface, but the very important part is the bend on the Y and on the X axis. At the end, as you can see, we have the solidify modifier before the displace modifier. So I just animated with just one keyframe the bend on the X and on the Y axis, and I did the same on a shape key modifier, just to influence the scale of the mesh in edit mode and not outside, just to get something like this. And you can see here, in the node graph editor, I could reach something like that, you know, like a sort of variation in a certain range. So now the problem is, how can I deliver this to the 3D printer? It was quite easy. I exported the animation as OBJ file, so I get for every frame a single object, already ready to be 3D printed and assembled at the end. Now, since I got to be addicted to this object, I said, okay, what I can put on the outside of the object, and I love science fiction and space stuff and planets, and so I started to think, okay, I can put maybe stuff like texture of Mars, Moon, Jupiter, and whatever. And this is the final output. This object is produced only with the 3D printer process in FDM, and that's a small detail. In the slicer, I use a fuzzy skin function that gives to the outer out skin a sort of roughness. So, but I wanted to get more out of this object, so I started to think about, okay, I can make some bottles, I can make jewelry, I can make oil bottles, I can make perfume bottles, and so on. And at the end, because I was thinking in small scale, what about a change of scale? Think something a little bigger. So I had, okay, I would like to have a caciocavallo chair in my living room. So, this is, of course, not, it's nothing to do with the digital fabrication, but it's a classical process of making and producing objects. So I have the basic geometry already. I just had to put some seam cut on the geometry and open it into the UV map editor. At this time, you can see in the middle up in the UV map editor a square shape, because when you do this, you don't know the scale of the object. You cannot master it. So I needed a geometry with a known dimension that I could use as a scale reference in a CAD file. So that's more colorful, but it's almost the same. The blue one is the reference shape. And at the end, I exported it and prepared it in a CAD file for the CNC machine in the fabric industry. And this is another one. I had to make many different kind of templates. And this is, those are a couple of screenshots about the first prototyping process. I'm not really happy with the final output. We have to make some changes, but we will get it. So, since this function of opening a 2D geometry on a UV map editor, it's this little problem that I have to scale or to have some reference, I was thinking, okay, Blender can do more. I'm not able to program in any language, but I got to know in the Blender world community, Fabrizio, that is going to talk after me, and we were just talking about this project, and I asked him if you could develop an add-on just to open already in scale the geometry, with maybe a control of the offset of the outer contour, and maybe taking also in charge in order considering the tension of the fabric, whatever. And he did it. It's not yet at the final stage, let's say in a pre-alpha, but it's a very, very nice one. So now I can get rid of the caciocavallo, so I was thinking, okay, I would like to make another scale change. What about this? Huh? So, Fabrizio is taking my place and is going to tell about the spin-off project.
Yeah. Thank you, Arcangelo. This is the conjunction point between me and him, because we have really worked together on this file. And, you know, so who I am, first of all. So my name is Fabrizio Lorito. I'm Italian as well. I'm an electronics engineer by education. I am a marketing manager by profession. And I am an artist and 3D artist by passion. How all these three things fit together, well, this is the challenge of my life. But, you know, putting together things very diverse and sometimes give space to creativity. So when I got to know Arcangelo and he described to me his research, I started to think, okay, he started from food, then he derived from food abstract shapes, and those abstract shapes turn into design objects from jewels to houses. Now, can we do something else with those abstract shapes? Because I was struck as well on how beautiful can be shapes from food if you put them in an abstract environment. And okay, I will show you what I've done. I think you have put the wrong slide, but that's fine. Okay. So this is the first one. This is the first one. So I put some irony in it. And yeah, I mean, it was just fun between me and Arcangelo to think of how nice would it be to see this caciocavalli flying in the air in the Magritte style. Next. Okay, next I move to Escher. So these are starting too fast. Okay, Escher. And here we have then another one. Now, there were a couple of technical challenges in it. The first was that I wanted to spread the spheres into the space with geometry nodes and still avoiding that they collide with the shapes. And then I used geometry nodes for animating them. And OK, this was relatively easy. A little bit more challenging was to create this feeling of pencil drawing on rough paper. And to do this, I had to develop a procedural texture. This is a kind of toon shader. But with very few nodes, I think I got an interesting graphical result. So like with Arcangelo's research, Blender is always part of the creative process, because when I see something, then I started to think, OK, is this something where Blender could add something to the final work? And so it's really a dialogue. You get some inspiration, then you look at the tool, and the final result is always surprising in a way. Oh, this was a challenge. This was a challenge. Unfortunately, I don't know how to stop this thing. This shouldn't start automatically, but I think you all know this. I don't know if I can go back just to show again. OK, to show again this. OK, this is a very well-known drawing from Escher. You know, this was a challenge, because how can you imagine to realize with a tool that represents real geometry, an object that is impossible, a stair where you are continuously climbing up or continuously climbing down, always coming back to the same point. I mean, when you draw on paper, you can do, but with a 3D tool, how can you do this? Now, of course, I hope this works again. Yeah, of course, all the irony remains. So all these caciocavalli that are jumping up and down on the stairs, they are remaining. And you see, I managed to get a convincing effect. Now, how did I do? Well, basically, does it start now? Yeah, now it starts. The point is that this stair looks like a continuous object only from one specific point of view. If you change point of view, then everything is different, and then you can see that some of these caciocavalli are jumping into the air or from the air to the stairs. So it was challenging from the concept to the realization. When I started to render this, I also realized that I had another challenge, that shadows were not convincing, because objects that are next to each other in this illusion, they are quite far away from one another. And so I had to use a visual effects technique, so the shadow casters that were placed in the right place so that shadows as a whole are convincing. So it's always, there is always a technical challenge behind these objects. OK, now, if this goes and if I can stop it, OK. So this was then, this is the final piece I'm going to show you. This was a big challenge, so now why this painting? First of all, because Piero della Francesca is a very famous Italian painter from Italian Renaissance, the golden age of Italian art and culture. I love him a lot. Second, because I want to remind everybody that Piero della Francesca was one of those artists, together with some before him, honestly, that has invented geometric perspective. So they are those who have first studied how can you represent a geometry, a 3D geometry on a 2D screen. And without the study of people like this, today we wouldn't have Blender. We wouldn't have the possibility of representing on a 2D screen 3D objects. So thanks to this guy. And geometry in this painting is quite important. This is not just the background. The geometry is part of the painting. All this church represents, gives the message of the perception of perfection and harmony of universe, and it's full of symbols. That shell over there with this ostrich egg that is pending there, they are symbols of maternity, of fertility, of perfection again. So geometry is an important part of the painting. And just the next thing before showing how this results into a caciocavallo magic transformation, all these guys over there, who are they? Well, basically, you can recognize them not from their face, because nobody knows what was the face of St. John the Baptist, but from the symbols they are holding or wearing. So this shepherd's stick, this is, and on the left represents St. John the Baptist, or this stone that was used to hit the breast of the second character tells us that this is Saint Jerome. Those guys in the background that are also staying on a higher level, they have jewels on the forehand and on the necklace, so these are angels. And on the right, among other people, you can see San Francesco, Saint Francis, from the stigmata, these wounds that he has on the breast. So at the end of the day, if you replace all these guys with caciocavalli, there is the same irony as all the other pieces, but at the end of the day, you recognize exactly those people. You recognize exactly those people. A lot of fun to do this. Technically very challenging because the geometry is complex and the shaders and all the textures are, you know, from a very famous artist in the Renaissance. But I was quite happy about that. Just a technical note, to reproduce the geometry, I used FSPy, but it was not straightforward because with FSPy, usually you have to input the focal length. And without the focal length, everything can be stretched in the depth direction, either very narrow or very deep. So since I had the reference of those squares on the roof, on the vault, then I used this to play with the focal length until I got the right proportions, and then all the geometry came out of it. Okay, this was the last that I wanted to show. If you want to see more, just follow us, and there will be other coming, because this is a project that just triggers a lot of ideas. I want to close with this clip, just to remind everybody that whatever we see on this screen, at the end of the day, they are just numbers flowing on a screen. And you can recognize them only because they've been turned into pixels. But at the end of the day, we are only seeing always numbers flowing on a screen. And that's it. Thank you very much. Is coming. Thank you.
Ce l'abbiamo fatta.
Grandi.